That is the good news about this is that, yeah, having kids is fun and cool. They're great to hang out with. And so I think, we talked with Tim Carney after his book came out on this show, and he talks about this notion of fertility being contagious. And you see areas like Israel is one counterexample to this whole falling fertility trend. You actually mentioned Israel in the piece. Well, actually, the early Zionists and also the Irish nationalists as these models of like, well, if we do want to preserve or like perpetuate and continue these cultures, then you need to look at these models of these kind of nation builders to look at what they did. And they're interesting examples. To think about. I wonder if they were facing real, immediate, like eliminationist threats, like armies and things that wanted to squash them. We are facing what you call this slow, killing us softly. It's not the meteor. It's the slow burn. How optimistic or pessimistic are you that it's possible to marshal the kind of will to construct a new nation when the threat is of that slower variety?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super optimistic. I think the evidence we have suggests that it's just like the example of Israel is really telling. Israel is the highest birth rate wealthy society in the world by far, and Israel is surrounded by enemies and has like, this sense that it's sort of repopulating, restoring the Jewish people after the Shoah, right? And that's a very unique set of circumstances where there is a very clear and immediate threat that is clearly linked to higher fertility and general intentionality. And that's hard. It's hard to achieve that when the enemy is wealth, comfort, distraction, and technology. I do think, though, again, one reason for writing a piece like this is people haven't people haven't thought enough about these things
Hmm.
as threats, right? As threats to the continuity of things you care about. And this is why I started out by saying, like, is it good that South Korea exists? If it's good that South Korea exists, then people in South Korea should want to think a little bit more like Israelis. And this is true everywhere. Like, if you are one of the small nations of Europe and you have a particular language or culture that you want to preserve, do you think, do you think it is good that, that there is a Romania, right? Do you want there to be a Romania? Okay, then you need to recognize that Romania as a culture and language and set of traditions is threatened by forces that want to unmake it and dissolve it. And if I were a young Romanian who didn't want to move to London or Paris or Berlin, that is how I would be trying to think. And I think the more people who can come around to thinking about the future that way, the more likely it is that local customs, local cultures, and local languages can all make it into 2075 or 2125 or beyond.
You advocate neo-traditionalism as one sort of remedy, and I must say, I recently bought an apron, and the trouble is that when I'm wearing my apron, my sleeves of tattoos I have, like, a ton of tattoos all over, my arms, they stick out, and it's a little bit of this, like, terrifying juxtaposition of aesthetics.
It's
So,
the perfect
that sort of
neo-trad
It's
aesthetic, I would
neo.
say.
yeah.
That's why that's the neo.
But
Tattoos are the
how
neo.
but how does this function without ultimately feeling and looking a lot like LARPing?
Again, a really good question. And I I don't 100% know the answer. The problem with all traditionalism in the modern world is that everyone is always aware of how chosen it
Yeah.
is and how contingent it is and how personalized and bespoke it is. And it's very hard. But this is why I specifically use the term neo-traditionalism and not the term traditionalism. True traditionalism doesn't make it. And you see this again in cultures that have sort of that are still traditional and have sort of tried to put up bulwarks against the modern world, right? Like Islam in the Islamic Republic of Iran is not doing that well. Catholicism in Poland is not doing that well, right? So you can't have you have to have some kind of reinvention of the traditional that belongs fully and accepts that it belongs fully to the 21st century. And that, includes, like, again, you have to put to, like, if you think about this in terms of male female relationships, right? Like, the people online who think that we're going to have the patriarchy, whatever the heck that was, right, back, and you're just going to have trad wives, in the kitchen and taking care of the kids, and the men are going to occupy whatever role they imagine men occupied in 1870 or 1370 or whatever.
Chopping wood.
There are going to be some people in some communities that have versions of that, but on a mass scale, no. Any kind of sort of traditional Catholic or Jewish manhood is going to have to be adaptive to the trends that have created the world that we have now. It doesn't mean that that sort of liberal feminism is going to make it in its current form either, right? But you have to be inventive, and you have to have, in a way, you have to accept that, like, yeah, you are putting an apron over tattoos, and that's okay. But the real challenge is, yeah, how do you turn that into something that your children can pick up on and imitate? Maybe that's the best way to put the challenge, right? Like, in one cohort, neo-traditionalism is going to feel like a LARP to some extent, no matter what you do. So the question is, are you creating something that your children can look at and say, okay, I'm, I'm Liz Wolfe's daughter. This is like a model of how a marriage works, how church going works, how having kids works, that I can carry forward as an inheritance. And maybe that's impossible, and modernity just dissolves and dissolves and dissolves, but that has to be the goal, I
That's a
think.
really good way of framing it, and I think that what you just said is such a useful corrective to the many people who think that people who advocate pronatalism or traditional religion, um,
I hear a baby.
yeah, sorry about that.
This is
No, you
neo-traditionalism in
don't
action.
have to be sorry. This is a safe
I might
space.
need to attend to that. No, but my point just being, let me see if I can get it to return. Those of us who advocate pronatalism or more people attending church regularly, there's a certain amount of like, it's as if our critics are acting as if we're, advising people to go back to this golden age that never really existed in like the 1950s. And to me, that's one of my biggest pet peeves because I'm not saying that you need to live the way that people used to. And I don't really believe that a golden age like that ever existed. It's more just this matter of like, examine Chesterton's fences, examine the fences and why they might exist, why they might have been put there before you attempt to dismantle absolutely everything. And
Well,
for
and
whatever reason,
also,
people don't really grasp that nuance and that distinction.
one thing too that is distinctive about our moment, right? So I have just written this book about religion that is sort of called Believe, that's sort of an argument for people going to church, among other things. But one of the distinctive things about our moment is, I don't think we're in a "don't take Chesterton's fence down" anymore kind of landscape. It's more like Chesterton's fence is gone. Guess what? There's no fence there anymore. Kind of seems like we could use some fencing. What can we don't want to rebuild the fence exactly as it was, but we're going to take some wood that was used in the prior fence. We're going to look back on, how that fence worked and how it didn't, and so on. And we're going to build anew, right? And again, this is the important thing about any kind of traditionalism in the American context, right? Like, that the world, whatever the traditional world is, that, of the AI images of, like, the husbands and wives going to church in 1952, that's gone. It's just gone. And anything that we build now that is pro-family and is religious or anything else is going to be new, and that's a big challenge. But it's also it's a reason not to worry that you're just being, pulled back into into some past. It's going to be new no matter what. The aprons and the tattoos are both going to be there, I think.
Hey, that was a clip from Just Asking Questions. You can watch another one here or the full episode here. And please subscribe to our brand new channel to get us started off right and be notified when new episodes or clips go up. Thanks for watching.